because of the fear that the government would prevent certain kinds of speech from entering the marketplace. With the advent of troll armies and organized disinformation campaigns across different social media platforms, the fear is that there is an overwhelming barrage of speech that distorts the truth. This epistemological battle of sorts was explained eloquently in the New York Times into the unprecedented proliferation of disinformation and hate speech on the internet have offered a serious challenge to the traditional ways of understanding free speech in a democracy. Secondly, in traditional civil rights activism of the sort that Bahu pursued, there was a classic state activist corporation relationship which played out in most of the struggles. Today, however, large social media corporations don't play the stereotypical role of being an entity that needs to be constrained or viewed as complicit with the state. When it comes to content moderation of online speech, there is a complex moral dilemma that arises in attempting to balance two key values. Firstly, upholding the freedom of expression. And second, the prevention of harm which may be caused by the spread of misinformation on the internet. There has been a plethora of discussion in recent times about the consequences of disinformation, the need for a regulatory mechanism, and the free speech concerns raised by such legislation or policies. Most criticisms of global anti-fake news legislation are based on concerns that such legislation can be overbroad and prone to misuse, thus restricting legitimate speech as well. Such issues about how to define disinformation and prevent selective misuse are essential. However, they put the cart before the horse. All liberal democracies purport to protect the right to free speech and expression. However, what remains contested is the application of this principle to concrete situations. The presence of laws against defamation, incitement to violence, and contempt of court indicate that free speech protection does not extend to all acts of communication. In deciding the contours of this protection, courts and lawmakers are applying a certain theoretical understanding of free speech. Where can disinformation be located in these theories? Before getting into the nitty-gritty details of how to tackle disinformation, we must ask ourselves a more fundamental question. Is disinformation protected by traditional free speech theories and constitutional jurisprudence under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution? I believe, and that's only a hypothesis, that demonstrably false facts are not protected by traditional free speech theories. The most oft-quoted theory of free speech is the concept of a marketplace of ideas that has found its way into Indian jurisprudence from the First Amendment in the United States. The Supreme Court has relied on this understanding of free speech in several landmark cases like Shreya Singhal and Bennett Coleman, one in 1973 and the other in 2015. This theory of free speech, which can be traced from Justice Holmes's dissent in Abrams versus United States, is based on the frictionless exchange of ideas. That a marketplace of ideas is a marketplace which promotes a frictionless communication of views, of thoughts, of points of perspective. It postulates the concept that just like a free market of goods, where a consumer demand helps the best products rise to the top, a democratic public sphere with a free exchange of ideas will let the best ideas prevail. The usual presumption, therefore, is that under this theory, disinformation is a part of the marketplace of ideas, and the only way to counter it is with more speech. However, several scholars, and a very distinguished scholar by the name of Ari Waldman, argue that false facts are not a part of this marketplace of ideas. The marketplace can only exist when there is agreement on the veracity or the truthfulness of basic facts. There is no marketplace of facts. In fact, the goal of fake news is to create a marketplace, to erode the stability of foundational elements of society, namely the truth itself. In this way, tolerating the proliferation of fake news erodes the free and open debate that democracy intends to protect. If we cannot agree on the veracity of basic facts, debate stops, partisanship hardens, and social solidarity breaks down. A study which was conducted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which studied 126,000 false stories on social media, found that false news spreads faster, deeper, and wider than the truth in all informational categories. These false stories were retweeted from 3 million accounts, approximately 4.5 million times. Simply by virtue of the scale of dissemination, fake news drowns out true information, replacing the character of discourse from truth-seeking to the loudest voice. Disinformation, therefore, has the power of impairing democratic discourse forever, pushing a marketplace of free ideas to the point of collapse under the immense weight of fake stories. A cursory glance at the newspaper every day will bring to the fore instances of communal and vigilante violence fueled by fake rumors and targeted disinformation campaigns. Across the globe, be it Libya, the Philippines, Germany, or the United States, elections and civil society have been tarnished by the proliferation of fake news. The purpose of the metaphor, a marketplace of ideas, was to promote an exchange of ideas premised on an agreement on basic facts. Justice Holmes's dissent was in the context of persecuting anti-war activists for their speech. Thus, what was being freely exchanged was radical ideas about existing facts and not the veracity or truthfulness of the facts themselves. For example, whether a religious site was desecrated or not, whether a speech was actually delivered, whether COVID-19 is caused by a virus or a bacteria, are all facts and not ideas or opinions, with many possible answers. I remember that while the country was faced with the tragic COVID-19 pandemic, the internet was rife with the most outrageous fake news and rumors, a source of comic relief in very difficult times, but also forcing us to rethink the limits of free speech on the internet. Traditionally, freedom of speech and expression was deemed to be an essential part of civil rights activism because of the fear that the government would prevent certain kinds of speech from entering the marketplace. With the advent of troll armies and organized disinformation campaigns across different social media platforms, the fear is that there is an overwhelming barrage of speech that distorts the truth. This epistemological battle of sorts was explained eloquently in the New York Times in 2020, when it said, "The spewing of falsehoods isn't meant to win any battle of ideas. Its goal is to prevent the actual battle from being fought." Therefore, we cannot fall back on traditional notions of free speech and must find new theoretical frameworks to locate free speech on the internet. The second point of distinction lies in the rupture of the traditional state activist corporation relationship. Civil rights activists no longer place the corporation within the traditional box of an entity whose power is to be restricted. In fact, to the contrary, they rely on social media corporations as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to expand their freedom of speech and expression, often in opposition to governance. In her article, which is titled Defending Our Digital Liberties, the Changing Contours of an Old New Civic Activism, a distinguished scholar, Ankita Pandey, argues that in the past, civil liberties activists had clearly defined battles. They opposed the government and the alliance of the government with corporates that allowed corporations to breach certain standards in the name of progress. From the perspective of many civil rights activists, the political arena was sharply divided. Government and private capital were on one side, while people and activists were on the other. But that world has changed. Today, digital rights activism is intertwined with private platforms in an unprecedented way. Digital liberties are being fought in a public space that is privately owned. Those looking for a form of resistance, unsullied by the presence of private capital, chase a nostalgic illusion today more than ever before. The basic principles of liberal and socialistic policies and politics remain the same: liberty, equality, and justice, but they are being fought for in a new space and conducted via a new privately owned medium that transforms the character of the activism itself. However, there is a flip side to adopting privately owned platforms as the medium for dissent, activism, and the expression of free speech. With corporations wielding such immense power, there is an immense amount of trust placed on them to act as the arbiters of acceptable and unacceptable speech, a role that was earlier played by the state itself. This can have disastrous effects on our societies. It has been widely reported and recognized by the United Nations that social media was used as a tool for ethnic cleansing in Myanmar by the military and members of civil society. Unlike state actors who are held accountable by the Constitution and the electorate, social media platforms are relatively unregulated. This is another novel challenge that digital liberties activists have to find unique solutions for. In conclusion, may I say, while digital liberties activism, including the protection of privacy and free speech, have gained currency at an unprecedented pace, we are still in an early period of theorizing on it. The civil liberties movement, led by luminaries like Justice Tarkunde, acted as a precursor to a larger narrative. In narratives, the very principles Justice Tarkunde ardently upheld are the guiding lights that beckon us in this era of digital transformation. This transformation is not just about technology. It is about the people and their rights. The torch that Justice Tarkunde carried for justice now illuminates our path towards safeguarding digital freedoms, ensuring that as we traverse through this landscape, we do so with the commitment to upholding the basic values of justice, equality, and freedom. After all, as the world moves online, our battles to uphold civil liberty must also follow suit. Thank you very much.